Precious Life is sponsored by Watchung Booksellers, proud to be the go-to bookstore for a thriving literary community, with well over 100 published local authors and innumerable publishing and media professionals. We are fierce supporters of small businesses and civic organizations through donations and promotions. We stand with advocates who support the right to read banned books, and we proudly carry a large selection of books that represent all people, families, and cultures. Our favorite thing to do is meet readers and introduce them to new books. We thrive on the challenge of helping a reluctant reader or finding a new gem for a voracious reader. We hope you'll visit and talk books with us soon. Or listen to our community of writers, readers, and book lovers on the Watchung Booksellers podcast. And you can find us online at watchungbooksellers.com. And Wild Precious Life is brought to you by Hidden Barn Books, an independent bookstore in Bar Harbor, Maine. Come browse for books. Isn't searching for that next book, not knowing what you might find, wonderfully stimulating and relaxing? We invite you to come and linger, pore through our books, and enjoy your time exploring. Or find us online at hiddenbarnbooks.com. We've barely put away the turkey roasting pan, the gravy boat, and basters over here, and suddenly, seemingly out of nowhere, it's the shopping holidays again. And I don't know about you, but right from the get-go, I'm already behind. Every year, I make lists on my phone and swear I'm going to shop ahead of time and put gifts aside so that come December, I'm not scrambling. And every year, it's the same sorry story. I'm staring at half-empty Target shelves and impersonal coffee gift cards, wondering how it all got away from me. I'm buying a generic peach candle for my sister-in-law and struggling to figure out which tea towel says, "I really appreciate you," to the librarian at work. Well, I'm here to save you some hassle this year. Because for the bookish folks on your list, why not get them a thriller? Everywhere I look, from my college-age daughter to my bookish uncle, folks love a book they can simultaneously cuddle up with and be scared of. And our guests today have teamed up to deliver Please Don't Lie, which is just such a book. Let me tell you about them. Burt is the co-author, along with Christina Kline, of the thriller Please Don't Lie. Anne's debut novel, The Dig, was an American Booksellers Association Indie Next pick and the Strand Bookstore's Mystery Selection of the Month. Anne is also the editor of My Father Married Your Mother, Dispatches from the Blended Family, and co-editor, with Christina Kline, of About Face, Women Write About What They See When They Look in the Mirror. Her essays and fiction have appeared in numerous publications, including Salon, NPR, and the Christian Science Monitor, and she's a past winner of the Meridian Editor's Prize in Fiction. Anne lives in Weston, Connecticut, and New York City. And Christina Kline is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of 10 novels, including Orphan Train, The Exiles, and The Foursome, forthcoming in May 2026. Christina's novels have received the New England Prize for Fiction, the Maine Literary Award, and a Barnes & Noble Discover Award, among other prizes, and have been chosen by hundreds of communities, universities, and schools as one book, one read selections. Her essays, articles, and reviews have appeared in publications such as the New York Times and the New York Times Book Review, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, and more. And Christina divides her time between New York City and Southwest Harbor, Maine. Christina Kline and Burt, welcome to Wild Precious Life.
So happy to be here.
Thank you.
Hey, we're thrilled to have you gals here to talk about your new thriller, Please Don't Lie, which from its opening insidious line where it's like, could today be any more perfect? And then you just set up this idyllic world where, of course, things are going to be going wrong. So it's a quintessential thriller from just the first vibes. And we're introduced to newlyweds Haley and Brandon, who tell us about their meet cute, which is, I believe they met at a funeral when Brandon bumped into her and knocked a drink down her shirt, which made me wonder about your meet cute. And did Christina, knock a drink down your shirt, or Christina, did you meet Anne while you were trolling for writer friends at a funeral?
Kind of.
Ladies, what's your meet cute?
That's a great question. Actually, we have a really cute meet cute. Um, so if anybody is the drink knocker, it would be me. Um, 26 years ago, I had just moved from New York City to Montclair, New Jersey, which is a suburb right outside of New York. And this was a suburb that was known for a place where a lot of writers and artists were relocating to, have their families. That's what I was doing. I came from Brooklyn. And I was desperate to meet like-minded people, other writers. I got the local paper and I saw an article about Christina Baker Kline at the independent booksellers in the town, Watchung Booksellers, still one of the best indie bookstores in the country, I think. And she was going to be giving a talk about her second novel, which had just come out in paperback. I saw the article and I said, I'm going to be this woman's friend. This is what's going to get me into the writing community. So I'm going to be brave and I'm going to not only spill a drink on her shirt, but ask her to then go have a cup of coffee with me once I've ruined her lovely blouse. So I went to the bookstore reading. I met Christina and she said, sure. And then she called me the next day. You can take it from here, Christina. And I said, so I had two little children, and Anne and I didn't even realize it, but we were both pregnant. She with her first, and with my third. And our children ended up being born 3 weeks apart. But anyway, the next day I said, would you want to go to like late afternoon matinee instead and sneak away? And she did, and we ended up going to Run Lola Run, and which was kind of a perfect one for us. We just had a total blast. So that was the beginning. And it was a friendship that has been rooted in, we're in several book clubs together, we're in writers groups together. We've had a lot of collaboration over the years. We did a nonfiction book together. We've worked in a Hollywood writers room. We worked on an imprint for a publisher together. There've been a lot of collaborative kind of moments. And through it all, we've also just been friends. And both of us moved back to New York City a few years ago. And so we live 6 blocks apart. So our collaboration is fairly easy in that way, for sure.
Okay, so I got to be honest, Anne, your meet cute with Christina sounds a little adorable, but also kind of creepy that you stalked Christina but it worked, right? Like if we learn nothing from the thriller genre, we should learn that sometimes stalking rewards people. And in this case, it resulted in years and years of a beautiful friendship.
It did. Although it's a great example, Annmarie, of how writers take perfectly regular situations that we have gone through and we project them into the future and say, what if this had gone a very different way than what would have happened? And then we can write about it as fiction.
And you do have to find your people. I know that I've moved a number of times, and I used to look in the wrong places. Sometimes my people were at the wine club and sometimes my people were at the bar. But it turns out your people, they're at the bookstore. They're at the indie shop on a
Yeah.
Tuesday night listening to, and you'll find 10 of them or 20 of them, or in Christina's place, in Christina's case, probably 150 of them, but they're there. And authors by and large are delighted to meet the people who read their books and fellow writers. So I love that that worked. Now, how did it come about this particular story? Because there was one of you had to ask the other homecoming, right? Do you maybe want to write a book with me? Check this box. So who did the ask?
It actually evolved out of working on this series for a television network. So a friend of mine who is a very prominent writer who had a production deal with a series with a TV company. Invited three different writers to come in and work on three different projects with
showrunner and with executives and the whole thing. So it was like a writer's room essentially. And um, I asked Anne to join me because we had collaborated on other things and I just knew it would be more fun. And immediately we had, we were just off to the races with ideas. And they loved our ideas, and we had a great time. And we spent 3 months developing a project. And in the end, it got to the very top, and we had all these, intense meetings where we were playing characters and doing the roles and like the whole thing. It was very interesting. And they wanted, in the end, they wanted it to be a procedural and not a kind of suspense family drama, whatever. And Anne and I really didn't want to go in the direction of police procedural. So we stepped that. We were like, thank you, we're going to think about this. But that led to our realization that even though everybody's so shocked whenever they hear that we wrote a novel together, this happens in Hollywood all the time. And, it happens on television shows, it happens on SNL, for example. There is always a writer's room, and it certainly happens in the movies. And so we happen to know a lot of people in this industry who work in writers' rooms, and that is what they do. And so essentially, we treated this project as a writer's room. And we both wanted to do a thriller because neither of us work in that genre. And we're very interested in pop culture. We're very interested in all of this stuff. And we both have our own thriller writers that we love. Just seemed like a perfect way for us to come together. Plot driven, but character driven too.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important to us that this is a different genre than what either one of us works on in our solo work. So we could have this sort of umbrella or kind of protected space where we could really play together, not worry about it being a Christina Baker Kline novel, not worrying about it being an Anne Burt novel, but evolve into this, what we call our third voice. That's what we've come to call it, because we really want this to be seamless. Like, please don't lie. Many people, and this is a huge compliment to us, say we don't believe it when we read it that it was two separate writers. It really does feel like a voice.
I'm not gonna lie. As I was reading, I was trying to like, I was trying to like catch subtle tone differences, or are Brandon's eyes hazel here but green there, or there. It is actually incredibly seamless the way you guys have put this together. I can't tell. At first, I would have thought, oh, maybe Christina wrote chapter one and maybe Anne wrote chapter two, or you wrote all the prime numbered ones and you like, but it doesn't read like that at all, which leads me to my question about how you wrote it, because now I'm picturing like, I don't know, it's in black and white and there's a typewriter and maybe I don't know, maybe Cary Grant is there. I'm picturing like the like the newsroom, what it looks like to have two people write, or maybe it's that scene from 30 something and you're both playing basketball trying to like come up with the idea. But literally how what did your process look like? How'd you write this thing?
I'll just start by saying that is interesting that you say that because we actually haven't quite talked about that. Um, the playing basketball and coming up with a story idea. I mean, because a lot of our early work was walking in Central Park together and hashing out what a story might be. And I think the key to our style is that we spend a lot of time on an outline, like really not just an outline, it's like a whole, it's almost
Like
like a
three. Yeah.
screenplay or a treatment. And then we wrote the first three chapters together. And we submitted it to Eric Simonoff, the agent, and he sold a two-book deal for us. And that was great. And then we had to finish the book, and I had to go back and finish my other book that is coming out in May. So Anne took the rest of the first draft and then tossed it back to me. I finished my I finished my draft of my book one day, went back to our book the next, and then did the second draft. And then the rest of it we sat down together and hammered out back and forth, literally across the table from each other. And we did like 4 or 5 more drafts. We had an amazing developmental editor. So we really did dig back in. And the last quarter, we totally redid in the end because we kind of got braver. I'm not
Ah.
sure what I left out, Anne, but
We did a lot of reading out loud to each other over the course of the later drafts, so that was a real big help for making sure that the voice was consistent. You know, when you're reading out loud, taking turns. The other one says, hold on, there's something about that sentence that doesn't sit right with me. We really shaped each and every sentence. And it really is at the point when the book is out in the world, neither Christina nor I remembers which sentence was initiated by which person, because both of us are so completely like, yep, we're behind this.
Yeah.
We're in agreement. This is what we want. This is what works.
And reading out loud is not something I've done a ton in my other work. I mean, sometimes, but it feels weird. But when you're with a partner, it's a totally natural way. And we just caught so many things by doing that 3 different times. Anne's a great, like, actual reader. I'm telling this, one time she was on a train and someone was like, I work for Audible. Could we hire you? Like, hearing her on the phone, her reading voice is fantastic. So it's lovely to have that because the two of us then can sort of in real time make changes.
I love that. I'm also fascinated by the idea that you guys are writing outside of a genre. Like there were no orphans on any trains in this book. There were no immigrants like shuttling through. Like that this is a genre, within which you don't have experience, and I find that terrifying. I mean, there are rules to thrillers. Like as a
Yeah.
reader, I've got to be on the edge of my seat. You've got to disappear someone. Things have to get murdery. There are rules at the same time. How did you not fall into like the frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn kind of, I don't know, there's an architect running through the airport. Wait, that's rom-com rules. But like, like how did you
Yeah.
stay original? Like you gotta follow the rules, but then you can't sound like
Yeah.
everybody else's. Was that hard?
Yeah. So, I mean, that was the challenge that we made each other brave to take on by doing it as a team. Each one of us, I think we wouldn't have done this as a solo project. It was about the challenge with each other. And a lot of it is about not just how our individual brains work as writers, but how our brains work together, the sort of spark that we get from each other. And the reason that this genre was so exciting to us to tackle was because part of our friendship and part of our conversation has always been about these pop culture phenomenon that we think are particularly interesting, especially for women. Over the years, whether it's the role of women in the true crime industry, which is something that we take on very much in Please Don't Lie, the self-help movement and how that impacts women. We are fascinated by all of these things and the way that pop culture treats them. In neither of our solo work, Christina's nor mine, there's not really a venue for exploring that. So we came into the psychological fiction space knowing that sort of that's what we wanted our characters to be grappling with. And then the rest of it is plot and mechanisms and actually solving puzzles. So we used a different mechanism. It's really a puzzle solving brain rather than a literary fiction brain. As Christina said, we've read a lot of the same and different psychological fiction authors. We've watched many movies since Run Lola Run together, analyzed them to a T, and we put all that into play. And part of that was the challenge. We love this genre. So for our first book together, we weren't going to explode it and say, oh, we're coming in hot and we're going to like do something nobody's ever done before. What we wanted to do was write a successful book within the constraints of the genre. So you'll see in Please Don't Lie some familiar things. There's a prologue. There's, a hint of the danger that is yet to come. You see that all the time. We didn't invent that. But what we wanted to do was then use our ability to go deep into character and make it original that way, not taking the genre in a new direction. And I think that's really what mattered to us in terms of what was not a repetition, was these were real characters with real grief and trauma and backgrounds that we were working with.
And a part of an aspect of our voice that we are using both in Please Don't Lie and the one we're working on now, which is called Watch Her Lie, which is a trad wife thriller, which is, we can talk about more if you want. But the voice is third person and it's just slightly removed from our central characters. So we have a little bit of an ironic distance in the voice, which I'm sure you picked up on, Annmarie, which gives us the ability to sort of do a little sly social commentary as we go. So like in this novel, we were taking a hard look at the first of all, the self-help book industry and like how those books function for people and how they can really help and how they can also be perhaps not so helpful sometimes. And then we were also looking at the role of social media and in particular places like Daily Mail, whatever, preying on people who go through traumatic experiences. So we really wanted to sort of mine those. And we knew that having a slight remove from our characters would enable us to do that more easily.
Yeah, it's smart that you guys bring in these um, pop culture references that have captured, I mean, not just Americans, but the world over. I mean, you mentioned true crime. Haley, we learn early on, I'm not giving anything away in here, has been the victim of violence within her family. And the violence in her family has been co opted by radio programs like
Yeah.
mine, if I were a true crime podcaster, but I'm not, but like programs that I mean, we're all, I think, ever since Serial, we're obsessed with true
Yeah,
crime. We love to
That's
hear
right.
about the girl disappeared or the guy who took her and solve these mysteries. But at what cost? And in your book, we see Haley trying to live inside of a world that keeps being co-opted by other people who want to tell her story. And it's a real hard look at. I mean, it's a secondary plot, I think, to the thriller plot, but it does
Yeah.
weave in there in interesting ways that I won't give away. We don't think much about the people whose stories we steal. Imagine
right.
the
Yeah,
worst thing that
that's
ever
right.
happened to you, and now you have to hear someone else dissect it on the radio for tens of thousands of listeners. I really don't think I'd thought much about that until reading this book.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Annmarie. That is who Haley is, our main character, and that is what we wanted to explore. You know, we were just a couple of days ago on this really interesting panel with some brilliant thriller writers having a conversation about the sort of ethics that thriller writers contend with because we are writing about violence in society and what is it that each one of us needs to do for ourselves to feel like there's something meaningful and important to us and about what we're putting out in the world. And I think you nailed it for us. Is like Haley is not the victim or the perpetrator of that initial true crime. She is like what we would otherwise call collateral damage, which is such a whitewashed term for human lives, destroyed. It's her sister and her parents who were the main focus of this crime 2 years earlier. And our book starts with Haley 2 years after all of these traumatic events, still being dogged by an audience for this true crime podcast who are suspicious of her, and they point to her like she's a celebrity and say, oh my God, that's the banking heiress. Ah, everything bad happened. That's whose story we centered. Like what really happens to this person.
Well, also, you're working within a genre that, if you're not careful, you could be simultaneously trying to critique women as collateral damage within a thriller genre that often likes nothing more
That's
than
right.
to make women collateral damage. As a child, I used to go to my dad's library and I would go to the public library and I was always reading. I read so many Sue Grafton novels. Like I saw women cut into pieces and they were murdery and rapey. And if you're not careful, the genre that you're writing in can take on the trappings that you're also trying to critique. And you both do such a lovely job in this book of I can see the line and you're not crossing it, right? This is not gratuitous. Yes, it is a thriller. Yes, bad stuff has to go down. But at no point did I feel unsafe in this book. And I really appreciate, and maybe that's because you're both women. I don't know. Sometimes I think
Yeah.
the violence done against female bodies in books can can be done badly and dangerously when in the hands of a male author. But I really appreciated the sensitivity that you brought to a genre that isn't always sensitive.
It means a lot
Thank
that you
you.
say that.
Thank
That
you.
was one of our guiding principles. We were determined that we were not going to have nameless, faceless females in dungeons and
Thank you.
serial killers being central to the story where the victims were essentially just, as you said earlier, collateral damage, or really just plot points. They were not, real people. And there is a whole swath of thrillers that is exactly that.
Yeah.
A lot of them written by men, some written by women, but what we were not interested in that at all. In fact, our whole I mean, we don't say so overtly, but these are feminist thrillers. These are
Yes.
very much women-centered thrillers. We've had a
Yes.
lot of men come up to us at events and online and say how much they loved it too. So we don't feel like it's at all exclusively for women. And in fact, I didn't even realize this when we entered this genre, but thriller readers are mostly men. There are a lot of women, but it is apparently statistically, there are just tons of men. And in fact, the woman who runs the reading series that we just did, we were on tour in California, was telling us that her audiences are usually largely made up of men. So it's fascinating. Who knew?
And they say men don't read. You're out there proving that wrong. That's wonderful.
Maybe they like to read about dead women.
Yeah. Did you guys get a chance to Google anything creepy? I mean, I don't want to give away the book itself, but you know how, I mean,
Yes.
like, did you get to look up
Yeah.
different poisons or I don't know,
Oh,
what
yeah. No,
mushrooms are
so much
safe to
fun.
eat? Yeah.
So much fun.
Bingo.
There were lots
Mushrooms.
of.
Yes.
I'll give you an example. I'm sure Anne has one too. But my example is, um, we're writing about the Adirondacks. Anne and I spent a week. We took ourselves away to a cabin in the Adirondacks for a week down a long dirt road in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of winter. And when it gets dark at like 4 o'clock, and we worked on our thriller all day long, and then we made the mistake of watching thrillers all
No.
night. So
No.
it was a little ridiculous. We're never going to do that again, but it was very helpful to us. But anyway, one of the aspects of writing about the Adirondacks was we knew we wanted coyotes to be in it because coyotes are so. We did not hear coyotes when we were on our week away, but another time, another weekend, my husband and I were visiting friends. All of a sudden, we heard these blood-curdling screams that all kind of like coming from everywhere. And apparently, and I went out and I recorded it for Anne, and I think I even called her. I was like, you have to hear these coyotes. We were worried we were over dramatizing the coyotes, but in fact, in real life, the coyotes are so much more intense. And they are howling together, like dozens of them howling together at night. It was crazy.
Yeah. We have, and that's just the real world example. I mean, there were so many
Yeah.
details that we had to Google. Again, I don't want to, I'm trying to be careful to not have any spoilers, but this is okay. Like in the beginning, when Haley and Brandon leave New York City and they move to this remote Adirondack location, which is the house that Brandon originally grew up in, that his father leaves to him. You know, Haley has never lived in this environment, but Brandon's like back in his element. And there's a scene where they go to the big hardware store and he's stocking up on all of the tools that he's going to need to live this life. And one of the things that he wants to do is, smoke game that he has hunted, wild turkeys and venison for the winter. And he's really into this. So he has to, buy his crossbow and he has to buy his axe. And he has to buy all the tools that you need to do it. And, we were like, oh, Bomo, you kill some game with a stick? I don't know. Can you buy stones to like throw at a deer? So we had to like Google these different boxed versions of crossbows that you go deer hunting with. And they all had complex names like the X4096-8B. I was like,
Totally.
it was fun. That was a lot of fun. I have actually one outtake example that I would love to share. So this is not a spoiler, but I love this detail so much. So we have Emily, who's Haley's best friend from college, is going to go on this solo hike in the Adirondacks, and she does this whole, prep. She's part of a company that preps her for this hike, and they learn a lot. And so she's a font of facts about how to be safe when you're hiking the Adirondacks, and there are a lot of bears in the woods in the Adirondacks. And in Googling facts about bears that Emily could know, I came across my very favorite fact about about hiking and bears in the Adirondacks, which is statistically, it is significantly more likely that you are going to be killed by a popped champagne cork than by a bear in the Adirondacks when you're hiking. And we thought it was so funny. Like we had like we were crying, laughing. We loved it so much, but it's not in the book. So fun, extra special fact for this podcast.
I love that. Well, I also love the fact that bears were mentioned because this book surely was born at a time when social media was always asking, were women happier safer in the forest with a bear or with a man? And most women were like, I'll take the bear. And so I liked that was in there. And I appreciate I just assumed one of you was from the Adirondacks. Now that I know that some of this book was born circling Central Park, I'm all the more impressed that you didn't call every crossbow a Nimbus 2000, which is what I would have done because I have no knowledge of that whatsoever. Because yeah, the setting was like my version of hell. The idea that I'm just going to go and live, I was already terrified. I'm like, this doesn't seem safe. Even when they were talking about how idyllic it was, I'm like, no, get me out of here.
No, we don't want to live there either. Nope.
We don't want to live there either. I mean,
but honestly, that's part of why it worked for us as a sake of we were scared of the setting we created. So we could, really mine that as writers for the situation.
But I will say, like the friends, for example, that we visited with the Coyotes, they live down eight-mile dirt road in the middle, honestly, in the middle of nowhere.
People love it.
The kind of place that internet is really spotty, that like if you fell off your tractor, it would take a really long time for anyone to find you. I mean, there's just like, it's insane to me. I don't even understand, but they love it. And tons of people live that way. And the whole prepper thing and living off the grid, like we were kind of inching into that territory too.
Yep. I mean, in an earlier relationship in my life, I found myself, following a man to a place that felt like this to me. And, luckily that was an earlier relationship in my life, but there was a lot of sense of like, I was not comfortable as a human being in that environment. I live in an apartment in New York City.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think someone says that in your book, like all the nature I need is in Central Park, and that might have been Emily, and that's a movement I can get behind. You mentioning though people living off the fat of the land makes me wonder about this. I know you can't tell us who did it in your second thriller, but a trad wife thriller makes me think like, hey, who took my sourdough? Or hey, I was going to use that gingham fabric, or like what's some tension to be found other than the obvious larger tension?
Well,
what are you exploring with the trad wives?
Oh my gosh, so much. Anne and I are obsessed. Anne and I always joke, we both went to Yale. We didn't know each other there. We were 3 years apart. We realized later that we had taken the same English classes. So we both studied Chaucer. We both studied Milton. Like we read we have a lot of the same base of literature. And then we are also in a writer's reading group, and we've read all of Proust, and we've read all of George Eliot, and, Tolstoy and all that. But we also share a real interest in pop culture that many of our fellow, for example, in our writer's reading group, don't necessarily share with us. So we have a constant and always have had like just an ongoing conversation about like what's happening in culture, and like particularly feminist bloggers and Substack writers about the trad wife culture who are dissecting it. It's very interesting to us. We're equally geeky about it. So we are very interested in what has led to this moment in culture that people, RFK Jr. and homeschooling and homeopathic this and that, no vaccines, unpasteurized milk, all that, which is all tied up in this very big world, right? And trad wives, again, the Republican boomerang, right, to women staying home, taking away choice, all of it. So we just love analyzing all of that. And we discovered a plot for ourselves where a trad wife influencer disappears. This is right in the beginning of the book. And then these two women with very different motivations, one of whom is interested professionally as a journalist, and one of whom is kind of an obsessive fan, are doing their own separate investigations for their own reasons and end up coming together. So
Right.
for us, it was just like a perfectly natural topic.
Right. And part of what we are very obsessed with is in line with what we are doing in Please Don't Lie, which is it's about the tradwife influencers, the online influencers. It's not about, like living the lifestyle. It's about promoting the lifestyle as a money-making and fame-making opportunity. And so that's where we're really turning our lens and saying, okay, what's going on here when you're adding that into the mix? And that's where the competition goes, not don't use my gingham, but like, don't take my followers.
Oh, of
And what
course.
we love is the disconnect between these women pretending that they are living a traditional lifestyle when they are the money makers in their families, and they're
Absolutely.
monetizing their brands, and they're selling their apple butter, and they're, all of it. It's just fascinating.
Oh, that's fun. I'm really appreciating this. Like, I'm thinking about the way you're cutting through thrillers with this keen feminist lens. I hadn't thought about the need for, honestly, this genre to have more of that. And that's what you're
Yeah.
talking about sounds delicious.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
we find it delicious. That's why we love collaborating on it too, even more than doing it ourselves, because it's really part of the cultural conversation. Working on these books for us is like our contribution to slicing this, with kind of like this sharp knife that's particularly ours. We have these conversations all the time where we just analyze, analyze, analyze. And now we have a venue for it, a forum for it that is delicious for us. You used that word before, delicious.
Well, there would have been professors who told you at Yale never to make a pop culture reference, right? That people who studied Chaucer would never have put the Gilmore Girls in their writing, because what happens 200 years from now, and we don't know what the Gilmore Girls is. But I don't think it has to be either or. I don't think you have to read
I
Chaucer
know.
or have pop culture influences.
Chaucer, his characters are the bawdiest characters. I mean, let's
So
be real.
dirty.
The wife of Bath, come on, she is talking about like throwing her skirts up over her head and doing whatever she wants to do. And she's kind of a feminist too. She's like, I'm doing my thing. You
She's
men
def
just like get in line.
Anne-Marie, there's this fun book, this writing guide that's kind of trashy but fun, but it has the writer talks about, I think it's called the Seven Figure Novel or something. And a writer friend of mine gave me a copy. Anyway, so the concept of the book is that there's butter that everybody wants. So you were talking about delicious writing ideas, whatever. And Anne and I talk about butter a lot. Butter is the stuff that people like crave in a book. The enmeshed relationships, the food porn, or the house porn, or the this idea of like really examining trad wives for us is really buttery. Like there's just so much appealing, interesting, fascinating stuff there.
Right.
Yeah,
And
you
that's
have to
even
have that
more than
glue.
you have to have that glue. And for us doing it in the psychological thriller genre, I think gives us excitement about the murdery stuff, right? It's not just, we're not just interested in murder for murder's sake. We're interested in it all tied up with these other things, the human elements of why somebody might do that, like, greed for one example, or something that's the opposite of what feels avaricious or sinful, like trying to take care of your children, and you are broke and you're going to do any means necessary possible to get your kid food on the table. These are real intense, those are their own kind of butter, because they're fears and concerns that every human being has about themselves and about the people they love.
And I love seeing that in a thriller. I just feel like we have often kept those separate, right? These social issues about women belong in that book, and only these plot lines belong in a thriller. I love the treatment that you're giving it, where you're weaving them in. That's fantastic. Hey, we have a lot of aspiring writers who listen to the show, and one of the questions I get pretty frequently has to do with breaks. I mean, you are both well established writers. You are very smart ladies with books up your sleeves and in your pockets. And Christina was writing another book while you guys were writing this one. Ridiculous. But can you think back? Like, can you go back in time to your baby writer days? Like, I don't know. What was your first story that was published, or who gave you your first break or took you under their wing in a way that might inspire others to know that they could be like Christina and Anne one day?
So, I mean, my first published story is maybe a classic example, but what happened next is not a classic example. I went to an MFA program. I went to the NYU program like 5 years after college. And just a few years after that, I was sort of on this classic literary writer track. I came out of there with some short stories. I came out of there with a draft of a novel, and then I sent to all the contests at the literary magazines. And I had a short story that won a contest. It was Meridian Literary Magazine's fiction contest. And, back then, there wasn't even, they called me on the house phone, right? Like the phone rang in the kitchen and I answered the phone and they told me that I had won. And, this was, so there it was. There was my entree, and I got some, what you would classically get this was like in 2002, I think, right? So some literary agents approached me, things like that. And I had a novel draft that I was working on, and, then it went out into the world. And I was really felt like, okay, this was my moment in this trajectory. And then my marriage fell apart. And I had a baby. I had like a 2-year-old child, and I had to pivot completely. I had to stop that track, and I had to support my kid. And I went through, a lot of life's vicissitudes in, that marriage, in the next marriage, which was like a rebound and also very complicated. And then I was the breadwinner for all of these people. And then I had a daughter and a stepdaughter, and they had to go to college. And so then it completely sent me off that track. And it wasn't until, I turned to essays, because I felt like I could write individual essays during this sort of life upheaval. And I, edited a collection of essays. Christina and I co-edited a collection of essays. I had one-offs here and there. But it was another 20 years before I published my first novel. And it wasn't until the kids left the house, I had more control over my time. I was able to make money in a way that was more, aligned to being a writer, and in chunks in that way. But I never gave up, because I had novels in drawers. It just meant too much to me. So I published my debut novel 3 years ago. It's called The Dig, and it was a literary suspense. And I was in my 50s when that happened. So from the classic example to the outcome from that classic example, 20 plus years passed.
I love hearing that, not the part with the vicissitudes, but I love hearing that the passion didn't leave you. It's actually really easy to not write. You just don't do it. But for those of
You
us who
just don't do
can't
it.
not write, and it just
Yeah.
hangs out there and it's always, scratching at your shoulder and poking you in the arm. I love that that didn't go away. And I'll link to the dig in the show notes from this. I have purposely not talked about you guys' other books. I've
Of
focused
course.
in on
Fine.
Please Don't Lie because this is a
That's
collab.
what we want.
But folks, I'm going to link to books, and you cannot go wrong with any that I'll recommend there. How about you, Christina? I know some of your story, but I don't think I know like your big break.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been writing for a long time. I think I have two bits of advice. One is I was a child of academics. My parents taught at a state university. I had student loans from college. I was always the kid standing in line at the bursar's office because my dad hadn't paid the bill. And even it was like $5,000, and my dad, hadn't paid it. And so I would start class 2 days late. I worked 40 hours a week during college. I still had loans. I went to grad school. I paid for everything myself. So I was always scrappy. Like I was always working. And so I always tell this story, but my three boys are very musical. They love music and they're involved as adults. Now they're in their 20s in different ways and in music. But when they wanted to major in music in college, my husband and I sat them down and said, listen, knock yourself out, major in music. You're amazing. We love you. Follow your bliss, but you must know that what you love may not be what makes you money, and your avocation may not be your vocation, and you must have something that earns money. You must know that you will have to do that, and maybe things will work out. You won't right away, but plan for it. And so, like my oldest, one majored in econ in the end, and one political science, and those degrees have really helped them. while they've still pursued music and now they're doing other things. But for me, my practical degree was an English major, which sounds crazy. Nobody believes it's a practical degree. But all my life, until I was able to make a living as a writer, I taught at the college level full time. I got an MFA, I got a fellowship, and paid off loans for 20 years, like some of us do. And I've taught and I've worked as an editor for publishers, agents, and, writers. But I created a life that enabled me to write books. And I have made money all the way along, but writing books takes a long time. And if your book is 3 years beginning to end, even if you get a reasonable advance, you're usually needing to supplement. So I always assumed I would need to make money. That's number one. And I would say you can craft a life as a writer if you just always assume that you need to make money. And then the second advice I would have is I did an MFA, and at the time in particular, MFA programs really frowned on the idea of not writing short stories or short works, right? Because the professors don't want to have to deal with a novel. I ignored that. I pretended I was writing short stories. I either submitted fragments with a fake ending or I had submitted old shit. Because I had a fellowship, I had 2 years to write, and I wrote my first novel that way. And I have never been great. I've published maybe half a dozen or more short stories, but I'm not great at it. It's not my skill, it's not my love. And also, as someone who was aware of my own not being able to mess around, I knew I needed to write a novel in order to get a foothold in the writing world. It's hard to publish stories. So I did, and I've never looked back. I love writing novels. As I said, I'm not great at stories. So my advice is listen to yourself in what you feel that you're good at, what your particular skill is, and don't listen to other people and when they're telling you who you are that way.
I appreciate that. Thank you both for those answers. And I could talk to you all day, but I'm finding you in the middle of book tour and all things busyness. So I want to make sure we wrap and honor your time. But we always close
Thank
with
you.
just a little lightning round of fun fan favorites. They're silly questions. With 3 people, we'll just play it like an awkward game of ping pong. I'll ask you some of the same things and some of the different. So, and these first ones are for you. You just pick one, okay? All right. It's coffee or tea,
Coffee.
mountains or
Easy.
beach,
Mountains. But
dogs or
not in
cats.
the Adirondacks and Scary Place. Yeah. Populated mountains with a lot of internet service. Um, Dogs. Absolutely
Populated
dogs.
mountains with a lot of internet service. No one has ever answered that question that way. I love it. Very nice. Christina, same questions for you. Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Although I grew
Mountains.
up in
Oh,
England, so I love tea. But it's funny when I'm there, I drink a lot of tea, but I really don't when I'm here in the States.
depends on the continent. Okay.
Yeah.
Mountains or beach?
I kind of would say beach. I have a house in Maine on the coast, and it's a rocky beach. It's not a beach beach. I'm not one who's going to lie under an umbrella for 8 hours, but I don't really want to be in the mountains far away from the water, I would say.
Got it. All right. Beach as long as we're not in the mountains and not near the water. Okay. Dogs or cats?
Dogs, I'm allergic to cats.
Oh, well, then that'll do it.
Yeah, I
Um,
know.
and are you an early bird writer or a night owl writer?
Neither. I am a late morning bird writer. I
Excellent.
like to have a few hours of gearing up, and then by about 10 or 10:30 a.m., my brain really kicks in, and I like the middle of the day.
Nice. Midday writer. Christina, how about you? Early bird, night owl, midday?
This is maybe one of the reasons we're good collaborators, exactly the same. When we go back, Anne and I have a book due at the end of February, so January and February we're going to keep to the schedule, but like we were both forcing ourselves to meet at 9 or 9:30, and it was like, we were both like, oh, but we
Right.
did. We will if we have to. I know
Right. When
that's
we're on
not,
deadline. No, on deadline, your preference goes out the window. You're just like, I'm in. Yeah.
Got it.
yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, Christina, we'll start with you on this one. Would you rather eat a mushroom ragu or an apple pie from one particular character in this novel?
Um, a mushroom ragu.
Gotcha. And mushroom ragu or
Although
apple pie? Oh, go ahead with your
Oh,
although. It's fine.
No,
Yeah.
it's okay. I'm thinking of our characters, but go ahead,
Yeah.
Anne.
And I will also say mushroom ragu because originally it came from this absolutely delightful cafe in the West Village that I would absolutely happily go to with Christina and split a bottle of wine and get a mushroom ragu and a nice salad in this cafe that we imagined.
Nice. All right, I'll give you two different questions here. So, Anne, we'll start with you. If you had to read a self-help book, would you prefer to read Savvy Women, Senseless Choices, or The Road Unbound?
Ooh. I would gravitate immediately to Savvy Women Senseless Choices because that would be so much more fun for me because I want to see all the senseless choices and make all kinds of judgments about them because I'm
Yeah,
savvy.
I didn't look this up. I assume these were all made up books. Yes, these were
Yep,
all made.
all
Yes,
made up
love
books.
that. Okay, Christina, different question for you. If you were reading a self-help book, I can't say that today, self-help book, would you be more likely to follow the advice to handshake your fear, or are you the kind of person who needs to follow your wild heart song?
Definitely follow my Wild Heart song. I should probably be handshaking my fear, but I would want to follow my Wild Heart song.
I
Fair
think we
enough.
hand shook our fears when we were in that cabin in the Adirondacks watching thrillers, and that was
For
enough. We
sure.
decided no more handshakes.
Fair enough.
Last night, Ann and I, yet again, we're in an Airbnb again, but here we are in downtown San Diego. But we watched The Woman in Cabin 10, and the reason it was so fun for us is we stop every like 40 seconds to analyze what's going on. And Ruth Ware blurbed our book, and she is one of our heroes. So it was really fun to watch and see.
Yeah, she's a giant in that genre. This is a fill in the blank for you guys. Anne, we can start with you. If you weren't working as a writer and you had a little magic, what would you be instead?
I would be a Broadway star, singing and dancing in a musical.
I'll buy a ticket to that. Excellent. Christina, how about you? If you weren't working as a writer and you had a little magic, what would you be instead?
Oh God, I think this is boring, but I would probably be a book editor. I love editing. I love authors. I know it's so stupid. I should be like in a circus or something. I'm so boring. I could just, be around books my whole life and people who write and read and think. Yeah,
So, if you didn't work with books, what you'd like to do instead is work with books. I
I
like it.
know. What about you, Anne-Marie?
I like that. No one's ever asked me that before. I do like the idea. I was a theatrical enthusiast with very little talent. So, but if I had a little magic and could be in a chorus or a kick line or be performative in ways that are anyone would like, pay attention to and buy a ticket to, yeah, sign me up for that. I always thought that would be
Okay,
fun.
you can be in the Broadway musical that I'm headlining. You'll be on the
Fantastic.
dance. You'll have a dance. You'll have a fantastic dance solo that brings down the house.
I love it. I think we should call it just if you're looking for titles, I think we should call it Savvy Women Senseless Choices, the musical.
Perfect.
The music.
Okay,
That's it.
last one for both of you. And Christina, we can start with you. If we were to take a snapshot of you, really happy, doing something you love, what would we see?
Oh my God. I mean, probably in the midst of my three boys, maybe on the coast of Maine, sitting around a fire pit at our house. And, that's a happy thing for me.
I love it. And Anne, how about you? If we were to take a snapshot of you, really happy, doing something you
And my
love, what would we
husband, and my
see?
husband.
Oh,
A late edition
oh,
of the
that's
husband.
fine too. Yeah, whatever.
I forgot
Husband.
about
Yeah.
him.
I won't tell. No, I won't tell.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely. I could repeat what Christina said about, my daughters or, my partner. Yay, love them. I would be very, very happy with them too, but I'm going to have to come up with something else because you took those. Let's see. I would say it would be sitting across the table from Christina Baker Kline in her apartment, writing together and
Oh,
laughing, laughing,
laughing.
laughing, laughing.
We laugh all the time. We do laugh all the
Yeah.
time. My husband is like, "What are you two? You're writing a thriller. What are you two laughing about?"
I love picturing that joyful collaboration. I think so often we picture what it means to be a writer is alone person toiling at the desk and gnashing their teeth and maybe eating the chocolate from the drawer. But so much of what we picture for writers is alone. And I know that much of it is done alone, but I love this image of the two of you joyful and creating
So fun.
together.
So, thank you, Annmarie. This has been so
Thank
fun.
you, Annmarie.
Thank you both. Folks, our guests today have been Christina Baker Kline and Anne Burt. They are lately the authors of Please Don't Lie, a thriller that is one and a two-book deal, so there'll be another one coming out soon. And they're also the authors of other things, and I will link to them. You cannot go wrong with follow these women. Do what Anne Burt did. Go to the bookstore, find them, and just be their friends, and your life will be changed. Folks, to everyone listening, we're wishing you love and light wherever the day takes you. Be good to yourself, be good to one another, and we'll see you again soon on this wild and precious journey.